Hello, I'm Richard Hattersley and welcome to this special Twilight of Self-Assessment webcast brought to you today by BTCSoftware. Well, preparation for self-assessment is in full swing, but this yearly ritual is set to change. These Twilight years will make way for MTD starting in 2023. So what will firms need to do to prepare, and what will they need to do in order to adapt for Making Tax Digital, and how will self-assessment season look after the Making Tax Digital comes into effect? To answer these questions and to help you along the way, we have assembled a star-studded panel, and I'm delighted to introduce you to them today. Joining us first, we have Rob Ellis. Rob is the CEO of BTCSoftware. Hi, Rob. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Richard.
We're also joined by Verna Galvier. Verna is from HMRC. She's part of the MTD for business unit there. So, hi, Verna. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for inviting me.
And finally, we're joined by Louise Tarpey. Louise is also from HMRC, and she is the head of external software. Hi, Louise. Thank you also for joining us today.
Hi, everyone. Hi, all.
So we have ourselves a brilliant panel. I can't think of a better panel to tackle such a subject as the one we're going to talk about today. But before we get cracking with the topics at hand, we have a little bit of housekeeping as we usually do. So this is, if you do encounter any technical issues, don't worry, this session will be available on demand. But if you do have any questions, please email them through to campaigns@accountingweb.co.uk, and they will help you with any technical issues you may encounter. And of course, this is, like all of our sessions, an interactive one, so we encourage you to ask as many questions as you'd like. I'm sure you may have some questions along the way. So please use the Q&A window, which you should find to the side of this video, and we will answer as many questions as we can throughout the session, and we will put them to our panelists certainly by the end of today's program. So let's start with the first topic today, and I don't think there's any better place to start than just to go over sort of the changes on the horizon that we have to expect. So I'll start, I suppose, with you, Verna. What can we expect then on the horizon with MTD, and how will this affect the traditional self-assessment season?
Okay, so in terms of MTD, hopefully, obviously, you'll all be aware that we've rolled out MTD for VAT, and that is very much business as usual. So we've had very successful numerous MTD VAT submissions. So the next thing is we're going to roll that out to the rest of the VAT population. So if you're VAT registered and under the VAT threshold, you'll be required to submit your VAT returns digitally. But I know really what you want to focus on is income tax self-assessment. So from April 2023, if you're a business, you've got business income of over £10,000, then you will need to submit your income tax self-assessment returns digitally for your first period that starts on 23. And I must apologise, every time I start speaking on the webinar, my cat thinks I'm her, so if she makes an appearance on this, I will apologise.
Thank you very much for that, Verna. Rob, over to you then. So we're now approaching the traditionally the busiest time of any accountant's calendar. There's a lot going on. It's incredibly frantic time. So how do you think this season is going to be changing in the next couple of years with MTD on the horizon?
Well, obviously with MTD, when it gets to MTD, there will be quarterly submissions to HMRC that will change the shape of the year. Practices will have to get themselves more organised in terms of those quarterly returns. I mustn't use the word returns, I've been told by HMRC, but it's almost impossible not to. I mean, as for this year, Richard, I don't see an awful lot changing in this year. It's very much business as usual for the self-assessment. there's a couple of things people need to look out for this year, which is to do with the July payments on account. Obviously, they can have been deferred until January. So practices need to look out for that one to make sure their clients have or haven't paid those July payments. But I really don't see much changing for this current season for MTD.
So, Louise, it's all business as usual for practitioners this year. When should they start thinking about the changes on the horizon? When would they best start to consider putting these changes into practice, would you say?
Well, Werner's probably the best place to answer than me on that one, but I think the sooner the better that you start getting your head around what's going to be required, the better. I think as soon as you perhaps get this SA season out of the way, you start thinking about what MTD means for you. That's not to say an immediate transition over to MTD or anything like that, but certainly there's a lot of information out there already on gov.uk that you can start reading up about, start planning, and really, I think Werner would agree, it's probably all in the planning.
Excellent.
Yeah, I mean, I think, sorry, if I can just butt in there, I think people will have learned from MTD for VAT, the people that were the most best prepared, that had their digital record keeping in place in time for mandation, were the people for whom it was more seamless a transition to MTD. So I think it's a good point. Make sure you know what you're doing and be prepared for it.
Yeah, I mean, right now, 2023 seems like a long way away, but after this current self-assessment season, it's only going to be 2 years. And as Werner says, leading up to the MTD for VAT launch, that just flew by. So people do need to start thinking about it, definitely.
Rob, you mentioned you picked up on a couple of quicks a moment ago that practitioners should be looking out for. Any other sort of disruptions that you can see happening, or is it going to be more for next year's self-assessment season where there may be some more quirks with the COVID issues that will be coming into effect?
Yeah, so this year there's very little change for the self-assessment returns. Postgraduate loans have come onto the forms this year, so that's the question they might agents might want to ask their newly graduated clients if they've got a postgraduate loan that needs repaying, because that gets repaid in parallel with any student loan they may have. There were some changes for capital gains regarding to non-residents' disposal of UK properties, but that's getting a bit into the detail. It's very much business as normal this year. As you say, Richard, next year the forms do incorporate boxes for the SCISS claims that self-employed people made, so people have to make sure that they know what claims their clients made. I know our customers have been very involved in helping those claims, so hopefully they're keeping a record of what has been received this year, so that they can use that on next year's tax return.
So yeah, I was going to say exactly the same thing, Rob. That people need to be aware that there will be extra boxes on the tax returns next year to take into account the COVID schemes. So just to look out for those. We're working on the requirements for those now and what that'll look like.
Yes, it might be best to touch on that actually, because I think there's quite a few questions coming in about the COVID payments. So if you did have any COVID payments at all from the government, that does mean that you can't actually join the pilot at the moment. So just to make people aware of that.
So to confirm then, if you have any COVID payments, you're unable to join the pilot, but say that the following year you'll be fine. Would that be okay to say, Werner? Well,
that's what we would hope. That's what we would hope. I don't know if Louise can expand on anything to do knows any more with the software.
Not anything I've heard yet, but as you say, you would hope so. I think it's down to this sort of transition in terms of what happens, and certainly one of the challenging things coming, I think, is the fact that the whole point in MTD is we try to bring SA forward into something like real time, which is as many of you probably remember we did some years ago with Pay As You Earn. This is actually much more bigger challenge than Pay As You Earn because your accounts can be up to 22 months behind. So there'll be a point where the two things transfer. So there'll be a point where you'll be reporting on your current year sort of self-assessment more regularly than you reported on a previous year self-assessment. So it's really about trying to get the information right and make sure that we're reporting in the right years as well. So yeah, I think we're working on what the requirements look like, but just to be mindful that there will be sort of this bit of a transition in terms of trying to get everything real time, and there'll be a crossover period.
So if we have the COVID payments next year, and then things are the ball's starting to rolling after that, it feels as if this is sort of prime time then this year, whilst we haven't had we don't have the extra COVID payments to play around with, to experiment and get yourself set then for MTD coming in the future then. So let's take a moment and just talk then about what firms can actually do this year, what sort of actionable things firms can do now in order to prepare for the rollout coming soon. Rob, we've spoken before about this, about some of the annual rituals of self-assessment season, and some of the every firm has them. The client that comes in with a big bag of receipts, the shoebox clients. And I'm sure this year many of our readers and viewers will be having the same sorts of clients knocking on their door, albeit virtually this year. So what can some of these firms do now in order to prepare with clients like that?
I think the biggest thing they can do is to encourage digital record keeping at this stage for the clients. And the clients that are already above the VAT threshold should be all on digital record keeping. But for the ones at the other end of the scale, to get them to keep digital records rather than the shoebox in the corner of the office is a big step forward. To get that habit now, build those positive habits now, because it will make the future much easier. It doesn't have to be expensive online bookkeeping software. It can be an Excel spreadsheet that just really lists income and expenses. Something they could do weekly, maybe monthly, just to keep on top of it, rather than at the end of the year have to run around trying to remember everything. As Louise said, it could be 22 months old when they come to submission. So if they're running around in the January trying to find all their records from 22 months ago, it's quite a task. I can't remember next week, let alone 22 months ago. Last week, I should say. So it's difficult. So if we can encourage that digital record keeping, that would be a big positive.
I think you touched on a really good point indirectly there, Richard, as well, when you talked about clients contacting agents virtually because of where we are with COVID. And I think that really, in a nutshell, sort of says why we need to go where we do with MTD, in terms of we need to be able to react quickly in a virtual world. And one of the driving forces there, a lot of people may be questioning why we're doing MTD with everything that's going on with COVID and EU exit. But one of the things that sort of came out of the Chancellor's schemes was this need to have more up-to-date information. And that's absolutely the driving force behind MTD.
If I can just pick up on that as well, without kind of wanting to ban the making tax digital drum. Really, I think businesses, it's been shown that throughout the pandemic, if your business has been keeping your business records in the cloud, for example, it's far easier for you to keep your business ticking over, because you don't need to go into the office to look at your accounts or your accounting kind of systems, because it's in the cloud and you can do it at home.
You have the pilot ongoing at the moment. What sort of lessons have you learned from that, from practitioners who may have had, or anyone who have had sort of similar sort of shoebox clients? How have they managed to handle the transition? Have you had any of those stories come through?
I haven't heard of any in the ITSA stories. Obviously, from a VAT point of view, the practitioners that have been speaking to us have been, I'd say the majority been very positive about making tax digital, and see it as an opportunity to provide more financial planning for their clients, rather than just doing the normal tick and turn of the invoices. I don't know, Louise, have you heard any kind of input from
No, I mean, ITSA is a very small pilot, as you know, at the moment, and that's one of the things we'll be looking to do is ramp up the numbers sort of coming into ITSA going forward. But certainly in VAT, as I say, there are some. We have actually got some case studies out there in the public domain that we can sort of share with people in terms of how that then improves your practice if you start to keep your records digitally. And as we said, I just think that the current situation we're in has sort of made it all the more important, because you're not going to be able to necessarily have a client turn up in your doorsteps with a shoebox with a shoebox full of receipts. You need to receive those receipts in a digital format, and obviously in this day and age where we are now, that can only really be a positive, and being able to share data and this mass sort of move that we've seen towards cloud. We were already seeing a shift in the software industry sort of towards cloud, because obviously cloud enables you to control changes from the centre, but COVID actually has accelerated that massively in terms of moving people into working from home and being able to access all the data from home. And this is MTD really is just an extension of that. That's it. It's the ability to be able to be flexible and adaptable and work from anywhere.
It's probably worthwhile repeating why HMRC are actually rolling out Making Tax Digital as well. Really, it's not just to make life difficult for businesses. It's not to make life difficult to businesses. It's supposed to make life easier for them, that it gives them the opportunity to concentrate more on doing their business and less time on their accounting system. But also in the future is going to give them the opportunity to look at one account and see their tax liabilities, rather than to have a surprise at the end of the year when you pull all your tax liabilities into place. And then also the idea is that if you keep your records as close to real time as possible with as little manual interventions, if you keep your records digitally, that you will not be making any kind of mistakes or errors or transposition errors. It's worthwhile repeating that is why HMRC are doing Making Tax Digital.
Rob, you're on the front line in some respects when it comes to dealing with practitioners when they're dealing with some of the self-assessment issues. So are you noticing that firms are approaching this season any differently? Are you noticing maybe more people becoming more proactive with cloud software?
Difficult one, that, Richard. I know that, certainly the uptake of our cloud solution in March was huge, because people, as Louise said, needed to be able to work away from the office. In terms of their approach to their clients this year, there will be clients that turn up with shoeboxes and they'll leave them on the doorstep this year rather than take them inside.
Disinfect them first.
Yeah, leave them there for a month and let them disinfect themselves. But I think there is that push to sharing records digitally. Cloud bookkeeping software is a way of doing it. Obviously, a lot of people are worried about the cost of that, but it can, as I said earlier on, be an Excel spreadsheet. It doesn't have to add loads of cost or a procedure to the business. It can be that simple. This year we've seen, I know across the summer, lots of people were helping their clients with their COVID claims. They spent a lot of time advising. We haven't seen a drop-off in self-assessment filing, though, at this time of the year. It's about where it should be. I think what we've seen in the past is people trying to get the more complicated clients out of the way before Christmas and then leave the run-of-the-mill clients to January where they've got the volume. I think that will happen again this year. So I think it's just a case of catching up now a bit from the time spent over the summer advising on the COVID claims. But everything does seem business as normal.
Yeah, I'd agree, Rob. I was checking actually the figures for submissions the other day, and certainly they seem to be strong, the self-assessment submissions coming in this year. If anything, probably slightly up on the same time last year. And I think that probably is because people want to get the records up to date for when the Chancellor announces more schemes. So they want to make sure. So it's sort of driven compliance in a strange sort of way as the COVID schemes.
Yeah, and then certainly if they're looking at a downturn in income, then submitting early, as Louise says, get their records up to date and maybe reduce their payments on account that they're either paid or would be due in the future. It's just knowing what the picture is. I think that's what people want at the moment. And that, again, is another reason for looking at MTD as a good thing, because if you're 22 months behind, you're not quite sure what's going on, are you? So if that can be more up to date, you've got a much clearer picture of your sort of your current rather than the what's going to happen next.
Absolutely. Thank you everyone as well for posting questions. We've got plenty coming through. So we will be posting them to our panel shortly. So please keep them coming. And we will get to them momentarily. But before we do, we've spoken there about what firms do in order to change this year. It seems very much business as usual, but the remote working has sort of pushed people to more adopt this more of a cloud and a collaborative way, which we're now seeing. But then this also does throw up some other issues, Rob, with firms now realizing that they're going to have to put some systems in place in order to help them manage this workload and help them manage with MTD on the horizon. And it would be really helpful if we had a Software Excellence Award-winning practice management software person in the house. Rob, do you know anyone who can help us on that one?
Yeah, I mean...
So yeah, BTCSoftware, of course, practice management award winners there. So what are you seeing that firms are doing, accountants are doing in order to help with their workflow, and how practice management software is now more important than ever?
I think when it comes to MTD and the quarterly cycle rather than the annual cycle, it will be important to have those workflows in place so that you make sure you don't miss a client. Clients work to deadlines. If they know they've got a quarter to do it in, they'll do it, but you still going to have that workflow in place to remind them. Automated emails that would go out to clients, and SMSs maybe even, or text messages to remind them they need to get their records into you quarterly for those quarterly submissions. That will be important if you don't have those in place, and they need to have reports behind them as well. So there's no point in just sending them out and hoping they're going to respond. You need to have a way of easily tracking those deadlines to make sure that you're meeting the requirements for those clients. I know there'll be a soft landing period at the beginning, as there was with VAT, but it's something you need to get in place during that soft landing to make sure that it's there for when HMRC do get the stick out and start fining people for not submitting. You know you've got that covered. So good workflow management is a key thing. And again, as I said, building those habits for those customers, that's what the agents can do, is help build the good habits for the customers. After all, they want to do their work. They want to not say run the business, they want to enact the business. They want to do the things they're interested in and not do the accounting side of it, which they're probably not that bothered about. They hope their agent will do that for them.
Yeah. So how is, in order to get the processes and workflows right, I have to have a proper understanding of how the workflow is going to change. So, Verna, what's going to be how is that workload going to change? Well, what's going to be the processes going forward? What sort of the key dates and timings which our readers and viewers have to get their head around in order to make these, I was going to call it submissions then, but in order to make these filings?
Okay, so what I would do if I had a practitioner admin, if I hadn't already got my agent services account set up, I would make sure that I have my agent services account set up. I'm fairly sure most accountants or agents will have done that already for their because of their MTD VAT clients. But what they might not have done is mapped across their income tax self-assessment clients, because they may have been on a separate account. So if I were a practitioner, that's what I would be doing now, to make sure that you've got them set up in your agent services account for when they are mandated to submit their updates quarterly. Well done, Verna, not returns. And I'm getting there. And I would also be encouraging or speaking to my clients about keeping their records digitally and what they need to do. So that's kind of like a wide brush as to what I think you need to do. But I think probably the most important thing, Richard, would be make sure your agent services account is set up and in order, and you've got your clients mapped over to it, so you're ready to go. And I mean, from a VAT point of view, agents, when they needed to sign their clients up for MTD, that they had to do it individually. So just be prepared you may need to do that for your income tax self-assessment clients individually as well.
Brilliant. Any other sort of tips, Rob or Louise, you would like to offer here for sort of the processes and how our viewers can get prepared?
No, I think it's as Verna says, really. Particularly, I think that we learned a lot from VAT. We were learning very much on the job with VAT. This was the first sort of big new delivery that we've done in a lot of years, and we did it in a slightly different way in that HMRC has sort of started working more iteratively than sort of that big bang approach that we've seen in the past. But one of the pain points that we know that agents had, and we acknowledge, is that signing up to the agent service account. So what we say is, if you haven't set up, as Verna says, if you haven't set one up and you've not got VAT clients, then please do. And if not, as Verna says, just prepare and start to look now at what you can do in advance of MTD coming down the line.
I also think as well, probably it's worthwhile saying, use as many of HMRC's resources as you possibly can. So as Louise mentioned, like, we are developing this iterative kind of way. So we won't know, Louise and I won't know the answer to all your questions, because, to be fair, HMRC probably don't know the answer ourselves, as a whole, to all the questions at the moment. So like, use all the services available to you. Subscribe to the webinars, the ITSA webinars, MTD ITSA webinars, or use the agent forum, keep up to date on, because we will be moving the process along over the next few years.
Rob, a moment ago we were talking about those automated messages that software can send out to prod clients to send in information. We've also spoken before in the past about using these next couple of self-assessment seasons before MTD as sort of a chance to test some of these practices and workflows in order to get prepared. And certainly having that software in place would help when it comes to something like self-assessment season, to get clients to send in that information and to gently prod them along the way, wouldn't it?
Yes, I mean, we see that with our customers at the moment. They do use the system like that to send out reminders. Again, the clients will work to deadlines, so if they give them a long deadline, they'll, like everybody, we wait until that deadline comes. We have seen some of our customers offering early filing discounts, if you like. So if they get their records in earlier for self-assessment, rather than in January, if they get them in by the end of November, they get a discount off their bill. We've seen others that charge more, just do it the other way around. So some are carrot, some are stick. So they put the price up if they don't get the records in. So it works the same way. But again, that changes the deadline. It shifts the urgency in the taxpayer's mind, if you like, to move that deadline away from the hard and fast HMRC deadline. It's just different things they can do to try and get rid of the January rush for self-assessment. And I mean, hopefully with MTD, with it being quarterly submissions, that will spread across the whole year rather than being every month. Every month we'll have filings, but there won't be anywhere near as many because they're spread across the 3 months of the quarter. So that will help, I believe, as well, going forwards. But again, you need those workflows in place to get those customers to give you the information. And hopefully then you'll have early filing discounts for if you can do it in the middle of the month rather than the end of the month when everyone else wants theirs done as well.
Absolutely, those workflows are going to be more important than ever to get your head around, aren't they?
Yeah.
Again, we've got loads of questions coming through, so we're going to be getting to them in just a moment. So don't worry about that. We will be getting to your questions momentarily. But before we do, to wrap things up, we've talked about what's changing. We've talked about what firms are doing this year in order to prepare and the importance of getting workflows in your practice. To wrap things up then, what are some of the last minute tips that would you advise practitioners to do, say this with their self-assessment plans in order to help them in the long run? What are some tips which you think would be really helpful? Who would like to go first on that one? Any sort of tips that you think would be good for this one?
I'm going to
let's start with
I'm going to say, learning from MTD for that, I would say come up with a plan, look across your client list, come up with a plan, talk to your clients. I think it's really, really important that you work with your clients so that they know what it is that you're expecting them to do and when they need to do it as well. And then obviously, I'm always going to say, make sure you set up your agent services account and you have that up and running, because that's going to be really helpful going forward.
Hopefully the MTD for VAT rollout will let agents think that this isn't going to be a disaster. It is a change that's required. The VAT change, it wasn't painless, but it went quite smoothly. I think there was a couple of hiccups, but nothing massive. And certainly our customers now just treat it as that's now run of the mill. I'm not quite sure what happened when the VAT 100 submissions removed in April next year. That was announced this week. We might get some people upset by that. But again, the MTD for VAT software, all of it works so well that should just be a seamless transition again. One thing you can do is move your customers' year ends to the 5th of April. If they're currently on the 31st of March, I would move them to the 5th of April for the self-assessment people. It doesn't get you out of MTD. It just means you get another 12 months before you're mandated into it. I'm not trying to avoid it, but again, if you can move some, then that would just, again, lighten the load for the first year whilst you're learning how it all works.
Certainly come in handy. We were talking about those shoebox clients and might give them some extra breathing space to get their head around things.
I just actually, that's a really good point that you just mentioned there, Robbie, in terms of if anybody does have clients that are still using the VAT XML service, as Rob says, we did let developers know this week that we are planning to remove that from April. We'll be writing out to customers to let them know. So if you have got clients still on that service, then just start to think about the portal. The main portal will still be open, so they can use the main portal if you can't use third-party software. So there are there is a default position there. In terms of hints, I'd say not just talk to your clients, but also talk to your software providers about what their offering is going to look like and whether or not it fits with your needs. So let them know early on that you're interested, because they'll be looking for volunteers as well going forward to test the service. So open that conversation with your software provider as well. And if you can, please do volunteer to join the pilot if you've got people that qualify.
Some top advice, and thank you very much, all three of you there. So for the second part of today's webcast, we're going to be putting your questions to our panel. So thank you very much, everyone who's posted questions so far, and please do continue. I'm sure we'll try and get through as many questions as we can. Apologies if we're unable just to the sheer load of questions, but we will try our best. So the first question comes in today from Lawrence, and this picks up a point about the pilot scheme and about the income tax pilot scheme, and they're asking how can the pilot scheme work if anyone who is benefiting from the COVID schemes are excluded. So is there any way that we can that these people eventually join the pilot at some point? What was the reason behind having these people?
Yeah, I'll take that, Richard. So if you think, as Louise and I have mentioned before, that HMRC are doing this in an iterative kind of way. So we built our systems. We went, our developers were working with us over this. We didn't see, and I'd like to think nor did the rest of the country, that COVID was going to happen, really. So we now need to build our systems or take COVID payments into account. So at the moment, the way that we still have the old kind of method in that we didn't know people were going to get COVID payments. Unfortunately, at the moment, they can't do the pilot, but hopefully in the future we will be amending our systems so that they can.
That's an interesting point. So from a sort of development point of view, we wouldn't really expect you to develop an endpoint on the API for a transient source of income, because everyone hopes that there won't be COVID payments again next year. Mm-hmm. So I'd be surprised for you to build that out just for something that's going to last for 12 months.
That's a good point. I'll take that away, Rob, and find out. It's probably more a technical point for developers, that one, but yeah.
Another question comes through, another one related to the coronavirus. This one, it comes in from Lee. And Lee asks, will COVID be causing the plan? I think it's asking whether COVID will be delaying MTD at all. And they go on to say that there is enough pressure with practices with furlough and other changes at the moment. So has there been any sort of thought about delaying at this moment in time, or is it very much sticking to the plan as it was before the coronavirus pandemic?
Well, certainly since COVID has happened, there has been various government announcements stating that we continue moving forward and making tax digital. In fact, since the MTD, its mandation was announced post-COVID happening. So I'd like to say no, but I suppose, who knows in the future. But as it stands at the moment, certainly HMRC's plans for making tax digital are continuing and indeed advancing. We're looking to consult on other taxes, for example, corporation tax towards the end of this year, beginning of next year. So, it's certainly carrying on for making tax digital.
It's probably worth mentioning as well that we were always planning to carry on delivering ITSA. What we were waiting for was mandation to really be able to start ramping things up, because it's quite difficult to start selling it to the third-party developers like Rob when they're not guaranteed that they're going to get the business at the end of the day. So what mandation essentially did for us is it started the firing pistol in terms of, right, this thing's really serious now. So we were always going to deliver at MTD, and as we say, we've had people in the pilot for a long time, and in some respects I think the COVID situation and the fact that the Chancellor realised that obviously the SA data, particularly more than any other tax regime, the data is so far behind that it made some very difficult. He had to make some very difficult decisions in terms of those COVID schemes. So, as Verna says, we can never say never, but the announcement was made post-COVID. So we hope that it will continue.
Yeah,
might not be the answer that you wanted.
From our point of view, the discussions we've had with HMRC, and these go back to March when COVID first hit, there hasn't been any drop-off in the enthusiasm and direction in which HMRC are travelling. So, yeah, I mean, there are questions that we ask, obviously, as software developers. Does this mean a delay again to MTD for self-assessment? And no, the message we're getting is no, it's not. And obviously the mandation's come out during COVID anyway. So, and I think the mandation is important. Until it was mandated, nobody was going to actually adopt it properly. But the mandation's there now, so it's full steam ahead.
Steam ahead indeed. Let's move on, as we will, full steam ahead with today's questions. And this one comes in from Christine. This is a technical one, so I warn you in advance. Will the £10,000 income be from business earnings and not include PAYE, i.e. if a director needs to submit SA owing to dividends, interest, etc., but no self-employed income, would they still need to submit quarterly? So a lot of moving parts there. Anyone want to pick that one up?
Yeah, I'll try and pick that one up. If the £10,000 relates to your business income, so not your PAYE, so that could be adjusted. But so you would be mandated if your business income is £10,000 or over, and you possibly would use your PAYE to adjust at the end of the year. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Were they a director of a limited company, so employed under PAYE?
So the example they gave was, so they said if a director needs to submit an SA owing to dividends, interests, but no self-employed income. So they're talking about a director there.
Well, I would say there's no self-employed. If there's no self-employed income and no property income, they wouldn't be an MTD. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, hopefully that's answered your question there, Christine. We'll move on to the next one. This one comes in from Linda. Linda says, practitioners will probably have to start filing quarterly submissions before the annual returns for the previous years have been dealt with. Will all software providers be able to cope with that? it'd be a massive burden on practitioners. So I mentioned software providers there, so we'll start with you then, Rob. Do you see this being something of, do you sort of see the dams bursting with this one, or is it something which you feel is easily dealt with?
I can't answer for all software vendors, obviously. I'm sure some will find it difficult. We'll be fine. I'm going to say that anyway, aren't I? But it's just we get our self-assessment software out early, so we get our self-assessment software out in the February generally for the April. We'll obviously be working on the two systems in parallel. So MTD, the pilot, will be working on that in parallel to our normal self-assessment work anyway. Yes, there's going to be a lot of work. There'll be a lot of work for the practitioners and a lot of work for our support desk. But that's what they're there for. So it's just a case of managing that change. Yes, they will be filing tax returns for the year that's closed, whilst filing live submissions for the tax year that's current. It will be different. That's why I think if you can manage the number of customers you've got in MTD and maybe join the pilot early, it might be hard joining it too early because of the COVID situation we've talked about, and the fact that COVID claims people are out of it. But even if you can get one or two into the pilot to see what's going on, I think that would help.
Yeah, I think this touches on what I was saying earlier in terms of there will be this crossover year where you will be sort of running two systems simultaneously, as will HMRC, as will the developers. I mean, it will be challenging, but just to reiterate, the reason why we don't like the term quarterly return is because it's not a quarterly return, it's a quarterly submission, and so it's an update. So we're not expecting the full reconciliation process to take place quarterly. What we need is just sort of an up-to-date transactional position, and we will return the information to you. So we will give an estimate of how much. So we're really wanting the software to take the pain out of that in many respects, and send that quarterly update in. So we're hoping that the burden won't be too great, and that it will still be the end of year reconciliation, or you might hear some people still talking about crystallisation, but that end of year sort of reconciliation process still. And then obviously as we go forward, we'll all get onto the new system and things, and things will become much more easier.
Yeah, the quarterly submission is very much a cut down. It's nothing like a full return. So I'll stop saying that, Louise. I'm not going to stand in the corner with a hat on.
We're trying to keep it simple.
If we move on to the next question, this one comes in from AccountingWEB's Dear Editor-in-Chief, John Stockdyke. So John says, can HMRC officials give us an idea of the number of taxpayers who expect to come into the MTD regime in each of the coming waves, and how many tax agents out there supporting them? It continues, what are likely challenges of dealing with such large numbers? So any sort of idea about the number of taxpayers you're expecting coming in the coming waves?
I know, Louise, you had to figure you quite fast.
Funnily enough, yeah. Only because I was on another call earlier where it was mentioned. So the size of the prize, as Mr. Wallace, head of MTD, likes to say, is we think around 4.5 million taxpayers. How that cuts up, we haven't got that lower level detail yet, but it is still very much a staged approach in terms of who we want to come in, and there are lots of scenarios as well sort of sat underneath that. So we will want to be testing a wide range of scenarios, which is why, if you can volunteer early on and you do have qualifying customers, we definitely encourage you to do that. But we will be sort of working with the developers on what that sort of looks like in practice in terms of getting those customers to come over. But we have similar figures with, we bear in mind we've done this once with VAT, and we had very similar figures with VAT, if not more. So, and that's gone really well, to be honest. So we've done it once, so we can do it again, is what I'd say.
I don't know, John, if John's question also takes into account like the agents and the agent services accounts. I think there's 34,000 agents who've set up their agent services account. I feel like I've helped them set up every single one of those 34,000. That's my impression.
Oh,
anyway.
we've done at least 30%, Werner.
I'm not too sure how many agents still need to set up the agent services account. But I can see a question actually. I can't remember. I can't see who's asked it because I've scrolled past it now. But somebody pointed out there's an accountant on or an agent on who's mentioned that it was very difficult to set up your agent services account if you weren't already a registered agent. And so I accept that. I take that totally on board. And that comes back to what Louise and I are saying about the preparation. And if you're an agent out there that hasn't got your agent services account, please try to set one up, because that will just put you on the forefront going forward. I think I kind of diversified that question into something else then, sorry.
Yeah, well, thank you for picking up another question. We'll try and get through as many as possible. So, thanks for spotting that one. And sort of a question which comes onto this one comes in from Ian, who says, have you got an idea about the number of how many MTD SA taxpayers you estimate currently keep in digital records? Any sort of number on that one?
That's a difficult one because we can't really see anything upstream of the submission that we get at the moment. So because there's no digital link in place at the moment, we don't really have access to that level of data. So the truthful answer is no, we don't. But we do know from VAT that obviously a lot of customers have made that transition already for VAT. So we're hoping that there's a chunk of customers out there who have already started keeping the records digitally.
We are having quite a few questions come in around older clients, especially those who don't use a computing. Is there any sort of consideration for those about when it comes to them onboarding the new MTD regime?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So there will be, you can apply for an exemption for any businesses that you feel can't comply with making tax digital rules. We haven't announced what the exemptions would be for MTD for ITSA, but they should or they will follow the same lines as the exemptions that are out there already for making tax digital for VAT. So, certainly if you feel that you have clients that cannot comply with making tax digital rules, I would advise you to apply for an exemption, and you can find out how to do that on gov.uk.
Earlier in the programme today, we were talking about those shoebox clients, and Rob, I think we were mentioning about getting some sort of bridging software for their Excel spreadsheet. This person, John, asked about they normally take these client shoeboxes and transfer it to Excel, and they were wondering whether this would still work when it comes to MTD. Would that be the case?
Well, I think technically the software could do that. It's whether that's acceptable to HMRC. Maybe that's one for Louise or Werner to answer.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, if you still want to keep, if you have clients that raise manual kind of invoices, they can still do that as long, and then when they can type the information into their making tax digital compatible software, and that is MTD compliant. So if they still want to keep manual, they can do. But obviously, they won't be getting the full benefit of making tax digital if that's what they choose to do.
Is the agent allowed to transfer those receipts for them?
Yeah.
Yeah, they are.
That's similar to the making tax digital for VAT rules.
Yeah. Okay. So yes.
So we spoke a moment ago about elderly clients. This person's asking about small clients, and they're talking in particular about ebook authors, and who they say they do not need nor can afford accounting software, which means that it would increase the costs. And so they were wondering around, and then they would continue that, saying that they're business individuals whose profits will be wiped out by additional accountancy or software costs. Is there any sort of exemptions for these kinds of clients, or is there any sort of consideration for that benchmark level of those people who be pulled in to the regime?
So we will be working with the industry to look at getting some very basic free software out there. That's something that I think MTD-SA is committed to doing. VAT, interestingly, it was never in the legislation that we needed free software, but we have seen some entry-level free software products hit the market anyway. And we did with exactly the same thing happened with Pay As You Earn as well. There's a number of sort of free products. So what tends to happen, we've seen it happen quite a lot with the market, is that you will get products that hit the market where it's if you have X number of transactions, it's free up to that. So you'll get a freemium version, if you like, of a product. So we do expect that there'll be products out there that cater for everybody. And I think that there's a common sort of misnomer out there as well that software is very expensive these days, but we're seeing a massive shift in the software industry and a huge amount of competition, as we saw with VAT. And there's pretty much a product out there to suit every pocket now. So I'd say don't necessarily be discouraged by the cost of software. Go out, do a little bit of shopping. We will have a software choices page as we do with VAT. We already do with SA. Obviously, there's only a handful of names on there at the moment, but that will continue to grow, and we'll provide as much information on that page as we possibly can.
Wonderful stuff.
You can stick in your records on a spreadsheet as well and use bridging software to get the information to HMRC. You don't need a cloud-based or singing or dancing software system.
We've also seen, as mentioned previously, quite a few questions on agent services accounts. This person's asking whether we're going to see a list of their clients on agent services. Is that something coming or at all?
This is Berna's favourite subject. Come on, Berna, you can.
We are looking, I think this comes back to Louise mentioned before that your HMRC are doing this as an iterative kind of way. We are aware that's a huge ask that's one of the agents' main asks is that they want to see a client list. We are looking on making improvements to the agent services account. That may be one that we bring in the future. I can't guarantee that, but it may be.
Yeah, one of the challenges we had with this was around the authority model, because the agent services account is a one-stop shop for your clients. So if you allowed a client list in there as things stand, everybody in your practice would be able to view that client list. Now that might be all right for some practices, but if huge practice, that's not necessarily how you might want that to work. So that's one of the challenges that has prevented us from being able to do that. But as Berna says, it is one of the feedback things that we get a lot, and it's certainly something that we keep feeding back.
Yeah, that at the moment we're looking into looking into whether agents can bulk sign up for ITSA as well rather than do it individually. Again, I can't guarantee that will come out, but we are aware that that is an ask from the agent community out there.
We're rapidly running out of time, so if we can quick fire some of these ones then. Margaret asks that they were having trouble getting through to the helpline, especially due to COVID. So they're asking whether HMRC is planning to make it easier to contact them, perhaps through an email, especially with MTD setting that up for a lot of their clients. So any sort of thoughts on alternative ways of contacting HMRC?
Yeah, I would, Margaret, if I were you at any stage of the journey, look through, there should be a green get help with this page button on any of the pages as you go through the journey. If you click on that button, it opens up a chat box, gives you the opportunity to speak to HMRC about the problems you're having with that page. I'd kind of try and do anything you possibly can to not phone the back helpline, to be honest. So use the agent forum as well online on gov.uk, if you just kind of trends of the methods available to you, but that get help with that this page button is quite useful, I think.
Excellent. Next one comes in from Parash, who says, how will the quarters work? Will it be calendar quarters or according to client's accounting period end?
Well, I believe it's according to their calendar. It's according to their year end. So if their year starts on April the 6th, they'll file for June, the June quarter, but the deadline will be July. It'll be a month later. So they get a month to prepare their figures after the quarter's closed. That's why if you can stagger your customers throughout the year, that would help. The same that you do with corporation tax. So corporation tax is linked to the year end, not to the hard and fast self-assessment tax year end.
Brilliant. Thank you, Rob. Another question which I've been asked a couple of times, that this person, Nick, is saying that they've had, in their office, they have issues with more than one person logging in, one SA login for the different offices, which probably is going to be happening more often with people working remotely. Is there any sort of thoughts on changing that so more people can log in through perhaps one account?
I'm not sure I entirely understand the question there. I don't know.
Okay, it was spread across a couple of messages, so I found those ones. So he said we have logins for different offices plus firms merged with. HMRC not currently amalgamate the logins for the other firms. Told need to send new 64.8s. There should be a facility to merge logins. And HMRC review
so
this.
I think in terms of agent services account, there should just be one agent service account for the firm, and then you can do various levels of authority within that agent services account. But there should just be one login, I think, the agent services account, unless I've misunderstood that.
I think they're talking about the old agents
it
account.
sounds like it.
Yeah. Different credentials for different merged practices and that sort of thing. But I thought when you created the agent service,
the new agent service account, there should just be one login for your firm for that.
But when you create that and you migrate the 64.8s, there's a way of picking them up for all the old logins, isn't there, Berna?
Yes, yeah. You move across each of your accounts from your old account to your agent services account, and then they are just in that one account then.
Yeah. So they shouldn't need to reissue the 64.8s.
No.
Brilliant. I think we have enough time for one more, for hopefully a couple more questions, maybe even one more. So this one comes in from, I lost it a moment there. This one comes in from Paresh again. Will a company which has income from residential properties in excess of £10,000 be subject to MTD? The company is not registered for VAT as all its income is exempt.
Yes, personal property. Sorry, go on, Werner.
Yeah, no, so yes, it is. I think are you mixing different taxes up there with VAT and income tax? So if it's got property income and it's over £10,000, it needs to register for Making Tax Digital for ITSA. If it's exempt income and it's VAT registered and its taxable turnover is below £85,000, it doesn't at the moment need to register for Making Tax Digital for that.
Okay, I would hopefully might be able to squeeze another one in. This one comes in from Christine. Will those in partnerships be submitting individual MTD returns only, or will they need to submit a partnership assessment quarterly?
Good question. I don't know the answer to that one, sorry.
I think that's one of the things that's still under design is partnerships. So I don't think we have the answer to that question yet.
Partnerships aren't part of the mandation, as I understand it. It's self-employed people and property and landlords. It was a question at the beginning, a long time ago, when we were looking at the first mandation.
Yeah.
I think maybe a good question perhaps to finish on is this one that comes in from David, and his question is kind of simple. Why quarterly?
Why not? How often does he want to do it?
We wonder if you like.
I guess it was trying to find the balance between doing something monthly and doing it yearly. Quarterly is probably a good balance. I don't know, Werner, what do you think?
I guess the majority of VAT-registered clients or VAT-registered businesses are on quarterly returns, except some of them aren't. So I guess quarterly. And if you think about helping businesses with their tax liabilities, it seems a reasonably regular period of time.
Great stuff. Well, we've managed to power through quite a few of those questions. Apologies if we didn't answer your specific question, but hopefully a few of these questions overlap, so you may have got your answer there. But unfortunately, that's all we've got time for today. These 60 minutes shall go by faster than a normal 60-minute. So thank you very much, everyone, for watching today. Thank you, Verna, thank you, Louise, and thank you, of course, Rob, for your thoughts and your expert advice. All that's left to do is to say thank you to BTCSoftware for supporting today's session. You should see a slide now which gives you more information on their award-winning self-assessment tax software and all the details there if you want to get in touch with them. But thank you everyone for watching. If you need all your information on the world of accountancy, join us on AccountingWEB.co.uk. I've been Richard Hattersley, and I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today and for asking all of your questions. But until next time, bye for now, and we'll see you again. Bye then.
Thanks all.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.